بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى، خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء. أما بعد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. In their stories are an insight for people of intellect. The Quran is full of the beautiful stories of the righteous, and specifically the Anbiya alayhim salam. I went to visit my teacher a few weeks back, who I, alhamdulillah, had the honor of memorizing the Quran with. He lives in Philadelphia. So I was in Philadelphia for a conference. The conference, it was called Muna. I had never heard of this conference before. So I thought, we're going to Philly. One of my teachers lived there. I'll use this as an opportunity to go say salam to my sheikh. I haven't seen him in a while. Side note, that Muna conference was unbelievable. Out of probably all the conferences that I've gone to in the years in the past, that one had to be on another level. I've gone to ISNA and ICNA and spoken at the conventions. They're very nice. A lot of beautiful presentations, but the Muna one was another level. And that final session that we did, there had to be no less than 20,000 people in attendance. 20,000 people, out of which probably like 90% of them were from Bangladesh. And it was beautiful. And I say that because it just shows the bonding in the community and sort of the sense of community. The lectures were in a language that were native to the attendees. Like there were so many lectures that actually happened in Bangla. There was one particular scholar, when he came on the stage, I'm quoting Sheikh Omar Suleiman here, by the way, okay? You guys know Sheikh Omar, right? Sheikh Omar got bumped off the schedule because of the sheikh. He actually didn't end up speaking. This is how big of a deal the sheikh was. When he entered into the hall, Sheikh Omar said, I honestly thought there was some shooting happening. Like I thought there was like some kind of disaster occurring because the crowd just went bonkers and saying, Takbir Allahu Akbar, Takbir Allahu Akbar. They must have said it 20 times straight. Takbir Allahu Akbar. And imagine 20,000 people doing this in the main convention center in Philadelphia. It was a beautiful experience, to be honest with you. It was different. But anyway, I went to visit my teacher, my sheikh, and my hifz teacher. It was a beautiful experience sitting in front of him, very humbling. I told him that, the day I finished memorizing the Quran, you said to me to go and, the day I finished memorizing the Quran when I was young, I was like 9, 10 years old. He said to me, walk around the masjid and all the shuyukh that are here, that are teaching their classes. There was a big hall. One sheikh taught his class over there. The other sheikh's class was over there. He said, go to all the shuyukh and give salam to them, shake their hands, and inform them that today you finished your memorization. So I did exactly that. I went to each teacher. The last teacher whose hands I shook, he said something fascinating to me and something that stuck with me and will probably be with me for the rest of my life. So I was young. I shook his hand. He says to me, do you understand the Quran that you've memorized? I was like, no, of course no. I don't understand any of it. Like, for those of you that are familiar as a Desi, how much of the Quran, as a non-Arab, how much of the Quran do you understand? Anyone? Like you don't understand how much I didn't know. Like if you know a little bit Arabic and probably have some idea of what the Quran is saying, I had no idea. I didn't know what the letters wa, thumma, fa, didn't know any of it. That was me. So he said, what do you know from the Quran? What do you understand when you read it? And this is where I wanted to connect today's session. I said to him, the only part I do understand are the names of the prophets. Because those stories were taught to us from a young age. We heard those stories growing up. So even though I didn't know the whole story of Yusuf alayhi salam, when I came to Surah Yusuf, I had an idea of what was going on there because I had heard the story. The Imam spoke about it. Sulaiman alayhi salam story, Dawood alayhi salam story. These stories could be told as a story, narrative, which is effective with children to keep them engaged and, help them stay focused. But as you get older and your intellect evolves into a true piece of understanding and reflection, you need to go from it being a simple attempt of learning narrative to now reflection. And this is what the Quran says, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ, an insight, a lesson, لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, for people of intelligence. Now, out of all the prophets who are mentioned in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal tells us that there are those prophets whose stories are not told to you, and then there are those مِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَصَصْنَا عَلَيْكَ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ لَمْ نَقْصُصْهُمْ عَلَيْكَ. There are those stories that you have been informed of. And then there are those prophet stories that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept to himself in his knowledge. We look forward to hearing those stories on the Day of Judgment, epic, each and every one of them. The one prophet whose name is found most frequently, whose story appears in the Quran most frequently, is Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. And that's a story that we're going to reflect on today. The story of Musa alayhi salam. It's with so much detail, and if you study Musa alayhi salam's life in the Quran, you find it in phases. There is a phase of Musa alayhi salam's story when he's young, and then there's a phase of him being in his middle age. Then there's a phase of his adulthood, getting married. The Quran then talks about the phase of him returning back to Egypt, and then the period of his interactions and his confrontation with Fir'aun. And then after that, the post-Fir'aun period, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also shares his interactions with Banu Israel and the challenges that he faced, particularly when it came to legislating, how they were reluctant in accepting revelation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lays out all of these phases of Musa alayhi salam's life in front of us. I'm going to try to pick at a few different parts of Musa alayhi salam's life for us to focus and reflect on. As always, we won't be chronologically covering the whole biography. That's something we can't do in a night. It takes more time. But what we will do is reflect on some aspects of Musa alayhi salam's life. The first reality and the first important lesson is that Musa alayhi salam was sent to a very complicated community. The situation of the people that he was with was peculiar. There were so many layers of challenges that his people, Banu Israel, and the rest of the community had faced. From Banu Israel's perspective, they were a people that were very well settled in Canaan, today's Palestine. And then, due to the beautiful dream of Yusuf alayhi salam and the epic journey that occurred in his life, he relocated to Egypt. So then his brothers and his father and the rest of them also came to Egypt. So Banu Israel that were originally in Palestine now are newcomers to Egypt, under the protection and guidance of their elder Yusuf alayhi salam, who was a treasurer of his time. Yusuf alayhi salam leaves the world as time goes on, and there is a change of hands in leadership. The Fir'aun that Musa alayhi salam dealt with was an interesting person, because in order to win popularity among his people, in order to get loyalty from his people, he used an old political tactic. And that was to turn the attention of the people away from the actual problems that society faced to the other. So he broke society into two groups. There was the Egyptian group, and then there was the other. The Qibti, Coptic, the Qibti, and you had the Banu Israel. And this is fascinating because this happens in our society as well, where you see people, rather than focusing on real issues, they turn our attention to non-issues. In this case, you see it as a contrast where Fir'aun makes an enemy out of Banu Israel, and therefore the Qibti, the Egyptians, the native Egyptians, oppress Banu Israel and view them as the crooks, the people taking their jobs, the people who were filthy, the people that were dirty, the guys who lived in the slums, the people who were kind of tucked away. Think of the slum life that we now may envision, that certain Muslims and Muslim communities in certain parts of Europe. You guys, if you guys have traveled to Europe, you know what I'm talking about. Like you go to France and you look at the Muslim areas, it's very intentional. It's very intentional. They live in ghettoized neighborhoods and communities. This is what they did to Banu Israel. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will is such that no matter how much you oppress a people and put them down, if they are true to His deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will elevate them. He will raise them. Yesterday, the people that were looked down upon, tomorrow become the people that people look up to. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. And as power makes its change of hands, and as fame, popularity, acceptance goes from one people to the next, to the third, to the fourth, in American history itself, you look at it, there is a phase of the other being the Native Americans, and then from there the other becomes the African American, and then the other becomes the Asians, and then the other becomes the Muslims, and now the others. The truth is, as one of my friends in a conversation, he was saying that the Muslims are no longer the other in America. We have to stop treating ourselves as the other. The media is done with us. They're tired of us. The people that were writing hate columns against Muslims in newspapers and journals, they had to leave those positions. They're no longer in those positions anymore. There's actually historical data that shows that people that historically wrote against Muslims for particular publications, they're no longer in those positions because they're tired of printing that stuff. Now the attention is towards the Russians and the Chinese. You want to be a hit, you want to become famous, you want to become known, stop talking about Muslims. Nobody cares about them anymore. Their stories are gone. We probably won't hear about any violence in America on behalf of Muslims for time to come. It's probably in our past. Allah knows. But now there's a whole chapter. The story is just starting with the Chinese and Russian communities. And it's like I was saying, وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. There always has to be an enemy. And Fir'aun used that exact tactic. So now we turn back to Musa alayhi salam's life. He does everything because he's terrified. He knows the cycle of humanity shows us that when you oppress any one group too much, from them will rise leaders. Every time you put one person down, one group of people, and you put them down and down and down, leaders will come from there. First of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers His rahmah on them because of them being oppressed and their du'as. But secondly, every child in that community, every child from those families now sees a dream of freeing and liberating their family. So the people with the ambition that you need for change, it's no longer just 5, 10 people. If you go to an average community and you actually talk with people, there aren't too many people with ambition, not with broad ambition. People have ambition in small segments of life, small areas. I think I can be a great doctor. That's awesome. I think I could be a great lawyer. Amazing. I think I could be a great bodybuilder. That's amazing. I think I can do good with business. But then there are very few people who have actually been mentored and nurtured in a way that they have universal ambition. These are the people you want to stay out of their way. They are trains. They will maul through anything. There is no challenge in the world that can stop them. There is no physical pain, no stress, no worry, no anxiety, no exhaustion. Nothing can stop these people. When you look at them and you reflect on their lives retrospectively, you will see that every day of their life, every week of their life holds so much more meaning than many of us live in an entire lifetime. They live with ambition. They have a dream. If you want to understand that dream, think of it as junoon, a craze. They can't see anything else. Ibn Khaldun, rahimahullah ta'ala, he talks about this. He says, his famous historian, that the greatest changes in history, not from an Islamic perspective, just in a broader sense of history, you see the revolts occur, or the revolts start from people that were oppressed for prolonged periods. That's where the strength comes from. Because in order to pull this off, you have to learn to not even fear death itself. Let it come. I live for something greater than that. When the human being taps into that energy, that they're no longer even intimidated by death. I mean, death is something everyone fears, but they don't view that as a force to stop them. That I'm going to live my life to its fullest capacity. I'm not going to focus on one thing. One of my good friends, you guys probably may even know him, Sheikh Abdullah Wahid from Michigan. He's a good buddy of mine. When he was young, he was really good at hockey. I don't know if he still is or not, but when he was young, he was really good at it. This has to do with him studying in Toronto for an extended period. So when we were young, I knew him from when he was still a student in the madrasa. So one time we were sitting together and I asked him, I said, what are you going to do after you graduate? He said, well, when I was young, I told my dad I wanted to be a hockey player. Because he loved the sport and he was really good at it too. He was picked up by some team and they were training him professional. So I said to my dad that I want to be a hockey player. And my dad said to me, I did not raise a hockey player. Like, no, that's not acceptable. Like, you are not going to be a hockey player. I'm telling you right now, you are going to dedicate your life to da'wah and serving the deen. His father's a tabligh brother, so they don't have that ambition of da'wah. He's like, you are going to do one thing. If I earned my entire life to raise a child, if you lived in my house all these years, if I have any haqq over you, I am telling you, beta, you need to dedicate your life to serving the deen. That's what I gave my life for. Not for a hockey player. Not for some, you guys get the idea, right? It's big ambition. Now, what he does with his life is it's a continuation of his father's ambition, right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower his mercy upon them. So now we turn to Musa alayhi salam's story that Fir'aun's trying really hard to hush these people, to shut these people off. Massive oppression. It's almost like a state of open incarceration where they're locked off in a community. They've been completely alienated. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Fir'aun that all the scheming and planning to stop the deen of Allah that you have going on, it's all going to come to an end. He sees a dream that a child from that community kills him. Imagine this. The man sitting on unspeakable material resources, and he's taken all those resources to shut off a hole. He says there's a hole in the wall that he's terrified of, and he's put all the resources he has to stuff that hole, to clog it up. And what does he see a dream of? What is Allah telling him in the dream? All your power aside means nothing. إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونَ. That when Allah wills for something to happen, it will happen. So Fir'aun goes into frenzy mode and commands his soldiers to kill the children of Bani Israel, the newborns. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a way. And when Allah Azza wa Jal plans for something, He tests along the way, and the people who pass these tests, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevates them into positions that change the track of humanity. Musa alayhi salam's story, the truth is, it doesn't actually even start with Musa alayhi salam. That's not the Quranic narrative. The story of Musa alayhi salam starts where? وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَرْضِعِيهِ فَإِذَا خِفْتِ عَلَيْهِ فَأَلْقِيهِ فِي الْيَمِّ وَلَا تَخَافِي وَلَا تَحْزَنِي إِنَّا رَادُّوهُ إِلَيْكِ وَجَاعِلُوهُ مِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. That's the muqaddamah of the story. That's the opening chapter of the story. He became a giant and a great Nabi. He was selected by Allah. That was done. But from a dunyawi perspective, the story of Musa alayhi salam and all the challenges he faces and all the reliance he needs to face Fir'aun, to stand in front of a stadium of people facing off with magicians. Think about a person who has a lisp in his tongue. He can't speak with clear words. How intimidated he must be by all the people gathered around him, and he is standing in the corner with maybe his brother and one or two, and there's a whole group of magicians who are recognized and renowned in a time and era of magic. He's standing with the giants. It's fascinating because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, when sharing that story of Musa alayhi salam confronting the magicians, He touches on the emotions of Musa alayhi salam. if you pay attention to the words in the Quran. Have any of you ever competed at have you guys ever competed before in a competition? Maybe of a higher form of competition, jiu-jitsu or boxing or Muay Thai or maybe basketball. You know, the first time you do it, and specifically if you're going up against good competition, how do you feel when you're in the ring or when you're on the court? Nervous? Give me some more. What else do you feel? Tense. You're like, yeah, tense. I like that. You're tensing random muscles that you don't even know exist. You don't even know you're tensing them. Your face is all, what was the other one? Apprehensive. That's a good one. What if I can't pull this off? Musa alayhi salam is experiencing all of that. He says to them, I don't want to jump to that part of the story until we wrap this part up, but I want to capture it, right? That Musa alayhi salam is so nervous in that moment that when they actually threw their فَأَلْقَوْا حِبَالَهُمْ وَعِصِيَّهُم وَقَالُوا بِعِزَّةِ فِرْعَوْنَ إِنَّا لَنَحْنُ الْغَالِبُونَ, right? And then in another place, Allah tells us that when they threw it down and the snakes began to run, people were terrified. Musa alayhi salam felt it in his heart too. What's going to happen here? And then he trusts Allah and throws it on the ground. And his staff turns into this massive snake, and it's eating away all of their ropes that they were doing this illusion with for the eyes of people. This whole Musa alayhi salam relying on Allah, Musa alayhi salam standing in front of Fir'aun in his court and debating him. If we were to appoint someone to debate, think of the context. Pharaoh, oppressor, a lot of power, strength, massive armies. In his court, Musa alayhi salam will stand in front of him and challenge him. You would think the person who will take this position would have maybe some experience in debate. Maybe has worked in parliament before. Maybe this person has taken debate class. Where did Musa alayhi salam just come from before he arrives in Egypt? Anyone know what Musa alayhi salam was doing before that? Before Tur. For 8-9 years of his life, what was Musa alayhi salam doing? He was a shepherd. He was farming. The 8 years prior to him standing in front of Fir'aun, what was Musa alayhi salam doing? He was in the fields with animals, cleaning stool, washing them up, getting their teeth clean, combing them, gathering them together, milking them, slaughtering them, cutting their meat, skinning them. This is what he was doing for 8 years. The Quran tells us. This is all Quranic narrative I'm sharing in front of you. So how does a person go from being a farmer to then standing in front of Fir'aun, tense scene, standing before the magicians, intense scene, being chased by Fir'aun and the sea splitting open? How do you go through all of this? In order for you to pull all of this off, either you have to be crazy, careless, bungee jumping, skydiving type of person. What do they call it? Parkour. That kind of stuff. I was just at Qalam right now, and one of our students, she has a daughter. So she was describing her daughter. She says, my daughter's parkourish. I said, what? Parkourish. That's a good description, though, of young kids. Parkourish. Musa alayhi salam wasn't that. To be honest, he was a timid person. He wasn't so much of a loud person. He wasn't so much of he had a very calm, very serious personality. How does Musa alayhi salam pull all this off? Well, it starts off with that وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَرْضِعِيهِ. That's where it starts. It starts with the act of his mother, where his mother sees that the soldiers are coming to check up on young children and her child will be slaughtered unless she does something. So she makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah Azza wa Jalla inspires her heart. And this ayah itself is clear proof that divine inspiration can occur to the hearts of non-prophets. This is what we call in Arabic ilham. Ilham can occur. Ilham is a thing. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَىٰ أُمِّ مُوسَىٰ أَنْ أَرْضِعِيهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired the heart of the mother of Musa alayhi salam, nurse him. أَنْ أَرْضِعِيهِ, nurse him. فَإِذَا خِفْتِ عَلَيْهِ, when you fear for him, فَأَلْقِيهِ فِي الْيَمِّ, put him into the river. وَلَا تَخَافِي وَلَا تَحْزَنِي. How does a mom put her baby in a river? I need you to think about this. How does a mother put her child in a river? Put him in a cave, that makes some sense. It's a secure place. At least there's no wild water there. There's some control. Hide him under the bed. Give him to the neighbor. Go to the next city and drop the child off there. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't just want to preserve Musa alayhi salam. In order for Musa alayhi salam to do what he's going to do 40 years from now, he needs to grow up in Pharaoh's palace. There's a conversation that's going to happen 40 years from now. And in preparation for that conversation, he needs to spend some time in Pharaoh's palace. Taqdeer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't take down Pharaoh in a single swipe. It's with class. The whole story is full of intricacies and detailed planning and what we call the hikmah of Allah Azza wa Jal. There are things that happen in life and you think to yourself, this is meaningless. Nothing's meaningless. Everything is by purpose. This whole idea of invoking coincidence again and again is a very Hollywood, Bollywood thing. It's a movie thing because of their atheistic perspective on the world, in their worldview. Muslims don't believe in coincidence from a theological perspective, that things just coincided. They just happened at once. Two incidents just happened that we naturally just met. No, that didn't happen. Everything happens by the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything does. Every gathering you go to, every interaction you have, every challenge of your life, every rise, every fall, everything happens by purpose and intent. So while you're going through life and things are happening, the challenges you face, the losses you occur, what you need to do is in the depth of those losses, as you're incurring those losses, you say, Ya Allah, whatever khair is meant for me to achieve from this, please grant that to me. Whether it's a business loss, whether it's health, whether it's marriage, whether it's raising children, and the list of things continue. Ya Allah, whatever khair is written for me in this challenge, give it to me, please. Let me come out wiser. Let me come out stronger. Musa alayhi salam's mother shows us the ultimate lesson of tawakkul. Relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, taking on a challenge, knowing that the consequences of miscalculating are related to you, that takes courage, that takes strength. But putting your child in that situation takes trust in Allah. There's no courage and strength that can do that for a person. She does it because she trusts Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that trusting act of hers, where she puts her child inside that basket and then lowers the basket into the river and sends it off, is the beginning of Musa alayhi salam's story. And that's the narrative and the underlying point at every stage of his life. That every challenge Musa alayhi salam faces, he trusts Allah and waits for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide the solution. That the occurrences of life, you don't control them. Whether you make profit or loss, whether you lose or gain, you don't control that. There are things that happen beyond you. You can only try so hard. Then you always think, oh, but I could have done this, I could have done that. Maybe some mistake on my part. Perfection left this dunya 1400 years ago. The rest of us are flawed. The best effort is the best effort, and that's the best you can do to yourself. What's beyond that? You just have to turn to Allah in those moments of helplessness and loneliness and ask Allah. To demonstrate this, we're going to jump over to one more area in Musa alayhi salam's life. And this is the point where Musa alayhi salam, due to circumstances earlier in life, had to leave Egypt. A person died. He was accused of murdering the person. It was an accident. But regardless, he leaves Egypt. وَلَمَّا تَوَجَّهَ تِلْقَاءَ مَدْيَنَ ولما توجه تلقاء مدين قال عسى ربي أن يهديني سواء السبيل. So the Quran says that when Musa alayhi salam turned his direction towards Madian, قال عسى ربي, perhaps my Lord, أن يهديني سواء السبيل, will guide me to the straight path. So Musa alayhi salam arrived in this new community, and he's not sure what to do. What do I do here? It's a new place, no people, no relatives, doesn't know anyone here. He came here to protect himself, to save himself from oppression, from an unjust verdict. What does Musa alayhi salam do? So he's very lonely in that moment. And he makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. رَبِّ إِنِّي لِمَا أَنزَلْتَ إِلَيَّ مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَقِيرٍ. He's been accused of murder. He gets out of there, right? He gets out of there. He's in a new land, new place, absolutely alone. We just moved recently. I moved from one place to another place. And what I realized, and I was talking to someone recently, that when you move, one thing becomes very clear. That the insan is extremely vulnerable if removed from your comfort zone. We function at the way we do physically, and we're able to contribute because there's stability here. If you take away stability here in the mind of a person, all that muscle, all that strength goes out the window. You're not stable in your marriage, your functionality goes out the window. You're not stable with your kids, your functionality goes out the window. You need peace of mind. And this is one of the ultimate goals of Sharia and revelation, to offer peace, to preserve intellect. This is one of the maqasid of Sharia, to preserve human intellect, preserve human honor. And that same person, before they move from one apartment to another, from one home to another, if you were to examine them in their comfort zone a month earlier, so much more productive, getting things done, they're able to communicate more clearly and say things more clearly, and their thoughts are clear, and you throw them in a new environment, and until they don't settle down, everything's just a big haze. It's like, you don't even know what's going on, what time you're sleeping, what time you're waking up, you lose track of yourself. So Musa alayhi salam arrives in a new place. And then on top of that, he's lonely. He's an adult. He's a strong young man. What does he do next? So in that moment of loneliness, while he desires and seeks companionship, he makes a dua to Allah. And his dua is, رَبِّ إِنِّي لِمَا أَنزَلْتَ إِلَيَّ مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَقِيرٍ. O Allah, Rabbi, O my Rabb, O my Lord, I am in desperate need of the good that you have revealed to me. You know the good that's making its way to me? He doesn't say what you will reveal. Anzalta, madi, past tense. What you've already revealed. I know it's on its way. I know ease it's on its way. Like a person struggling in business, that I've struggled and struggled and struggled. Ya Allah, I believe in you. And that's what makes me different from the kafir. The kafir doesn't believe in you. So when he suffers loss in his finances, he's just sad, and then he goes to therapy and he's more sad. He goes to therapy and he's more sad. But as a Muslim, when I suffer loss, I just turn to you and I say, Ya Allah, give me the reward of this in the akhirah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the believer a whole different world, a whole new dimension of interacting with the material, which the non-believer does not have access to. What is that? The dimension when it comes to the material that Allah has blessed the believer with is called barakah. It's a wild card. That is a result of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's giving. And when a person has lost, let's say a person loses $1 million, they say, Ya Allah, give me barakah in this. Is that possible? Can you lose $1 million and still have barakah? Can you lose $1 million and still have barakah? What would that look like? Anyone? I mean, there's no one answer. Beautiful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless your health. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that sadaqah repels calamity. It pushes calamity. That's a form of barakah. What's another example? Clarity. That's a good one too. Right? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open your mind. Maybe that $1 million was your distraction. Maybe that $1 million was distracting you from your family, from your grave, from your meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Barakah comes from there. Another example could be that $1 million leaves you, but then you learn to find contentment and peace with whatever you have. You realize, I actually didn't need that $1 million. I can still be charitable. I can still live a good life. As a young person, like many of you, as we're building our careers and building our dunya, and we're looking ambitiously, how can I grow from one place to another place, financially speaking, right? Sometimes you step out of your world and you see other people, and you realize that they live such humble, simple lives with tranquility and peace. What am I wasting my life doing? A few weeks ago, I was in London for a conference, so 3 hours away from there is where I studied when I was in England for 9 years. So I went to visit my teachers. And I mentioned one of the shuyukh in the khutbah today earlier, actually. So another one of my teachers that I met when I was on that trip, when I went to visit him, subhanAllah, like so much barakah in his home. The moment I walked in, he just kept serving food and served so much food, all of it. And he not only served me, but all the people that came with us. Like it's a group of people that were traveling together. He served all of us, and he was filling the plates of food with his own hand, just loading it and giving it to us. And I know this person. He doesn't have an income. He probably gets paid like $800 a month. That's his compensation. He teaches hadith at a madrasa. They don't pay a lot of money there. He probably gets paid $800 a month. But look at the way he's feeding us. My sheikh, who I studied Quran with, the one I was talking about from Philadelphia, when I was visiting him a few days ago at his house, he was showing off with his house. He's like, look at my house. He's very old, by the way. It's cute, I was like, Hazrat, bahut pyara ghar hai. Such a beautiful home. I said to him, this home is $1 million home in New York. And he smiled more. He was really happy. And it was a beautiful home, by the way. It was gorgeous, beautiful home. So then he, almost in tears, he said that I'm not worthy of this home. This is because of my sons. They work, and one of them found this place. So today I'm blessed that Allah gave me a house like this. And then he said to me, when I taught you, because when I was in madrasa, I was young at the time, 8, 9 years old. He was my teacher. He said at that time, my salary to teach Quran to you guys full time for the whole month was $800. How much did I say? $800. A man with 4 kids. And he said, my rent was $500. My utilities used to come out to another $200. So with the $100 left, I'd give $10 to each of my kids. And I'd save $60 for my savings. And he said, people wonder why I left teaching hifd in that madrasa and why did I relocate? So the reason why I relocated is because the electricity bill went up. And I had to relocate. Imagine a person's living a life like this, that his whole life has to be uprooted and changed because of what? What did he say to me? The electricity bill went up. And that broke me. So I had to move. And you look at these people who've spent their lives serving the deen, but he lives beautifully. If you're wondering, maybe you might think, oh, a person who lives in a small apartment or a small home might live miserable. Not at all. They're very happy. Allah has given them, alhamdulillah. They get to eat with their children. They put their children to sleep. 5 people share one bathroom, but it's with mahabbah. Everyone knows that there's a little bit of love lathered in there. In the damp towel in the bathroom that's perpetually damp. And the damp rugs in the bathroom that are perpetually damp. There's a different love there. There's a different barakah there. So, to wrap this up, I know salah time has started. Musa alayhi salam makes this dua to Allah. Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin faqir. Allah, give me the good that you've already given me, that's already been revealed for me. When you have a loss in life, as a believer, when you face loss, you get to ask Allah for the barakah card. You get to ask Allah for barakah access. That, Ya Allah, I just lost a lot right now in my life, but I'm going to make dua to you, Ya Allah, give me barakah. Give me barakah on what remains. Give me guidance on what to do next. Guide me. So Musa alayhi salam makes his dua, and then we, again, just fast forward to the story. And not too long later, he finds himself with a companion. He assists some young ladies with giving water to their animals. They head back home. They testify to their father that we met a noble man and a strong man, and we met a man who's very trustworthy. As a father, you would assume that he hears that there is a person of nobility. He then takes the initiative to call Musa alayhi salam. It's so much haya and modesty built into that interaction. It's a story of itself, by the way. But since our series is called Trials of Prophethood, we took a different angle. And then he arrives in front of this lady's father. Some historians say it was Shu'aib alayhi salam. Wallahu alam, there's a lot of ikhtilaf there. And in the interaction, soon after that, he finds himself married. Where was a man a little while ago, broke, lonely, worried, and then makes a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala solves his affairs. Musa alayhi salam's story is a story of tawakkul. Musa alayhi salam's story is a story of the highest stakes at every point. Like when you read his story, you have to understand every one of those stories, every one of the interactions that he has, they're not like low stake interactions. They're not mediocre stake interaction. You guys watch the Khabib McGregor fight? Did any of you guys watch it? No? When you guys watched it, at that time, when the fight was happening, how did you feel? Man, high stakes. This man insulted the deen. I want his face bashed in. A person whose deen was insulted cannot tap. Khabib, die if you need to. We'll do your janazah. High stakes. But what's Khabib McGregor nonsense? Well, UFC promotion. We come over to this. Every interaction of Musa alayhi salam, extremely high stakes. He's representing a whole people, and the spotlight is on him. And so the Quran frequently reminds us of how Musa alayhi salam, who spent the years before all of these high stakes interactions, doing what? What was Musa alayhi salam doing before he faces Fir'aun and before he faces the magicians? He was a shepherd in the fields. Allah Azza wa Jalla has his own way of doing tarbiyah, of preparing people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with this tawakkul as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala empower our hearts with the strength of iman. May He allow us to find solace and comfort in moments of difficulty. My nasiha to you today, as I close this lecture, is whenever you face loss in your life, immediately turn to Allah and ask Allah for the barakah that follows. Ya Allah, give me that barakah. I want the cream. I know I had my eyes set on something. You give me what I actually need. Give me that barakah. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay. Yusuf, hold your lamp.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
استووا استقيموا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.